Hey Amber, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks.
It's so good to have you here in the show. I think we originally met at a Salesforce conference somewhere last year where we had a great coffee, a great in-depth chat about marketing ops. So super pumped to have you here. And for starters, can you kind of tell the audience what it is that you do and what was your journey leading up to your current role at Shell Renewables and Energy Solutions?
Sure. So I've got a bit of an unconventional path of sorts. And I think it's really led to my success in marketing ops in general, if I'm being honest. Um, I've I wasn't one of those people that grew up knowing that I wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer or a firefighter. And so I got the opportunity to kind of bop around quite a bit and give myself permission to investigate and explore before I landed on anything permanent. And so that included managing a coffee house and managing a pool hall and bartending and working as the executive admin for a marketing firm in downtown Philadelphia and I was a subprime mortgage underwriting analyst for a bit, and I've worked in insurance on both the health and property and casualty side, and now I'm at Shell, and so uh, I've had a very robust career thus far, and even within Shell over the past 10 years, it's been experience with trading and supply, and then moving to our upstream businesses and closer to our assets, and then back to downstream and starting up a new brand and getting to do that twice actually. So, and having some experience on the IT side, bopping over into the business side, and then taking that experience and bringing it back as well. So what I'm currently doing is managing the marketing technology and operations for Shell Energy, our retail energy brand within Mama Shell, as I like to call it. And it is really focused on bringing low carbon solutions in the retail electricity space to customers, both on the B2B as well as the B2C side. And so in that space, we get to play with all of it, right? So my team manages both the B2B as well as the B2C side of the house and the customer experience and across all channels. So web, email, social, in-person, hybrid, you name it, we've got it.
Awesome. So one of the things that really stuck with me after our first conversation was how you essentially helped build out this team. And there were different aspects to that. And one of the things that I'd like to explore a little bit to maybe some of our more aspirational leaders who watch the show is how did you go about that organizationally? And then second, if you don't mind sharing, I know you had a really cool structure in mapping out use cases and current capabilities. So could you speak to that organizationally and just how you structured the capabilities?
Sure. I mean, first and foremost, I just want to say that it was a group effort on all fronts, right? So none of this was the Amber Madsen show or the Amber Sellens show. So we I first and foremost, I have an amazing business partner. Her name is Cassie Hexted. She is phenomenal. And without her and the kind of combined trust that we've been able to build within the business, we wouldn't have been able to make any of this possible. I also want to give a shout out to Scott Brinker, who provided the foundation of what I took and kind of elaborated on and ran with. So, kind of his four box model, where it's what is it, the orchestrators, the builders, the modelers, and the makers, right? And it's this concept of bringing all of the different pieces that you need together to have cohesive conversations around what is going to make the capability that you're building successful. So a big part of what we did initially was we decided that there wasn't going to be a line or any sort of division between our IT team and our business folks. And so we really wholeheartedly adopted the strategy that The digital marketers that sit more on the business side, closer to the sales team, really are a core part of the delivery team. So they're not, they are in the trenches with us all day, every day. They come to our daily scrums. They sit with us in our planning meetings. We have joint strategy calls. They're a embedded part of our team. I would also say, and be completely remiss if I didn't mention that we've also been working with partners along the way as well. PwC, IBM. A lot of this is new skill or really focus areas for Shell that we haven't spent a lot of time developing internally. And so we went to the external market, and we talked to a bunch of people, and I've been incredibly lucky that I've been able to even in-house some of those phenomenal external resources. For instance, my solution architect is top notch. And I was lucky enough to be able to fight for and grab him from the external market. When it comes to how we've developed what it is we do and what we manage, and where we've essentially taken our strategic roadmap when it comes to scaling, it's been one, we've run this like an agile product, because digital marketing is not a project. So that's one of the first things. So our team runs, agile scrum cadence. And so we've got 2-week delivery windows and all that fun stuff. But also we've built and been incredibly focused on establishing capability with global context, in the sense that we want global capability with regional flexibility, because we understand that not all of our customers are going to want the same things or respond in the same way to us in the different regions. So we've been very technology agnostic in that way, very intentionally. We've taken another very intentional decision that unless we can monetize it, we're going to purchase it, as opposed to trying to develop it ourselves. Because at the end of the day, we're not a MarTech company, we're an energy company. And so we wanted to be really strategic about that as well. Initially, starting it all up was quite expensive. But what we've been able to do with it is now extend that into other regions. And so recently we just stood up an extension of the capability that we've delivered for, what was it? Half the time and a tenth of the cost. And
Amazing.
so being able to take the model and kind of prove it out that, hey, this works. And it's starting to generate quite a bit of buzz internally. And we're starting to get more businesses that are paying attention and want to utilize what it is that we're building. And therefore, it becomes much more valuable across the board for Shell, and those investments really start to pay off. I will say one of the other really important parts of kind of this journey was something that one of my mentors, Mary Jarrett, who is former Shell, now turned career coach, said to me on one of our catch-ups. And I said, Mary, I've been going around and I've been telling everybody about this thing, and I've been trying to convince them, and I don't understand why nobody wants it, right? I know it's what they need. They keep telling me that they need these things, and I know this is the answer, right? I've already got it figured out. I've done the hard work. Why won't they just take me up on it, right? And she essentially said, it's one thing to tell them, it's another thing to show them. And so at that point, it was a significant turning point for the mindset of the team. And we really, instead of, kind of focusing on telling the entire company about this thing that we were doing, we just decided to put our heads down and do it really well. And and then once we started to essentially tell the value story on the back end of that, that's what caught some buzz, and that's where
Yeah,
we're able to extend um, the capability across lines of business into other areas. But it's it is that sort of mindset and that mentality that is driving us today.
very cool. Thank you, Amber, for elaborating on that. And there's been so many things there that you said that were of interest to me. First, Scott Brinker, love the shout out there. Scott is, of course, the man who leads the MarTech landscape. For those who don't know yet, but I think most people on this call will be very familiar with Scott's annual paper that he publishes. So that's super cool. Um, with regards to what you've been doing, Amber, it sounds a little bit like, first of all, congratulations with creating that buzz with that latest project, and
Thank you.
seeing you can deliver and roll it out for a fraction of the cost is super cool, especially at your guys' scale. Very important. And it
Yeah.
sounds like what you're doing there is like front loading, and it may be more of an upfront investment, but then afterwards you're going to see economies of scale essentially.
Hmm. Yeah, and we're also really looking at how we create a horizontal marketing operations team that can manage all of these different pieces together. I think we have somewhere around 16 different MarTech tools that my team actively manages, and we're in them all day, every day. And it's all of the Lego blocks that build out the things that we're working with, and it's the product pillars that we reference, and referencing the model that I've essentially built was we've got, marketing and communications is one pillar. We've got customer data management is another. We've got sales data management and enablement. And then we've got services and offerings delivery. And so it's really four key pillars of the capability that we've established. And because we're starting with capability, what we're able to do is where a tool that we're already utilizing, say, for instance, with DESelect, right? If you were to take, initially we have the segmentation, right? And so that falls under, that could be under, marketing and communications management around specifically the capability to segment our audiences. But then let's say that you guys extend into some other space. Well,
Mhm.
instead of us having to go, if we were reviewing it from the technology first, we would be taking a lens of, oh, well, we need something that does this other thing that we're looking for, right? We would be leading with functionality, or, the what rather than the why or the how.
Mhm.
And we're potentially then seeking tools that have overlap in functionality, overlap in cost. It takes a lot to spin up a new tool in my environment. And so where I can just essentially take DESelect and copy and paste you into other spaces and extend not only the value of my initial investment into the tool itself, but also extend the capability and the connectedness where we already have data integrated. That's best case scenario. And so we've really taken the approach of sort of traditional architecture and flipped it on its head, so that we can be more efficient and, again, scale globally.
Very cool. You mentioned there along the lines something about building a horizontal team. Could you talk to that? Could you speak to that and explain to the audience what that means to you?
Absolutely. So um, Shell is incredibly matrixed.
Mhm.
And what I've done, just to give scale, right, is I've essentially built a operations team that sits within one element of our brand, Shell Energy, within one region. Right now, what I'm looking to do is I'm actively doing it. I'm actively extending that team and that team's allocation across to Europe. So that's one example of how we begin to develop this horizontal capability. In addition to that, I'm talking to other lines of business within our downstream efforts that are also customer facing and have similar needs, and seeing if we can't put together a proof of concept. What does it look like realistically if we have this team or this center of excellence that if you need digital marketing support, you can come to us, you extend our tech stack, which we're already paying the majority of it, so you only pay a fraction of it. We extend our team, which again is fractional. You get our tried and trusted and true tactics of templates and journeys and SEO learnings and all the things. So essentially, it's building an internal agency of sorts
Mhm.
where we're providing a squad or a pod dedicated to marketing operations to the different customer groups, and then being able to have that oversight where if one part of our business wants to tell a low carbon story that's connected to another part of our business, we then have the ability to bring those two pieces together and tell it consistently and accurately and effectively across those different audience segments. And so
Mhm.
it really, I personally hate the 10x term. I think it's overplayed and frustrating, but it really amplifies our effectiveness as well as our spend, not just in my business unit, but across Shell as a whole.
We'll just say 100x.
Sure, it's arbitrary. we'll
And
we'll just whatever X.
so you mentioned storytelling there, which I think is a great bridge to my next question, which is you've written your mission is to create and deliver compelling stories. Is there like a recent campaign or strategy where storytelling played a critical role?
Yeah, so on my side, it's less around the the actual content. So my role isn't necessarily the words. My role is the delivery and the cohesiveness of the integrated story. So how do we pull all the pieces together to address the pain point end to end, right? So it's less about that single piece of content or that single piece of whatever that asset is, and it's more about how do we break it down into its bite-sized pieces so that the customer journey, which is not linear for any business ever, it's more like a Jackson Pollock painting, where you've got, you're just dropping little bits of paint all over, the canvas, and you're trying to follow the footsteps to see, are they more interested in this side or that side? And then, what have you put over there to help them on their journey? Um, it's a little bit like an RPG in that way. You're just building a world for them, and then you're setting up resources along the way for their side quests. But
By the
so
way, I
for
love your references as someone who both likes to paint and loves to play RPG video games. You're hitting all the
know
nerd
your
buttons
audience,
right
right?
now.
But it really is around, those those Lego blocks or those bits and pieces, and how you segment it out, and then how you connect the data so that it's easy to find. You don't want your customer to have to search for the next piece that's going to be useful for them. You want to be able to make it really accessible and easy for them to get at so that they are continuing along on whatever their journey looks like at the rate that they want to progress it. I think one of the main challenges in this space, especially for a business like Shell, though, is that at any given point, a customer could be a supplier in this part of our business and a competitor in this part of our business. And so when it comes to going through and really identifying what that journey should be, it
Mhm,
can't be at the domain level alone, right?
mhm,
We have to ensure that everything that we're building has the right context around the domain and what that relationship should be for that specific piece for that asset.
You
And
just
so
remind
it's
me. Sorry, go
really
ahead.
really fast. But
Yeah,
it's fun.
so it's
It's a big puzzle.
it's also interesting, and maybe you can relate to this because you've been in insurance. I remember insurance use cases in segmentation and prioritization where in a complex B2B2C environment, some insurance brokers have these um, overall suppression and waterfall rules on what message can be sent by whom under which circumstances, because there may be conflicting messages going out from a broker if you're not careful. Sometimes there's even um, legal considerations. And I'm kind of starting to visualize as you talk about how you have such a complex landscape of products and services with individual recipients sometimes having multiple hats, and not just at the personal level but also at the company level, where it must become this like quite complex maze or maybe some kind of matrix of, okay, I should send this communication to this kind of company, but this company is also the, a competitor, let's say, and they should not receive that. Like this probably happens all the time for you guys.
Yeah, it's a significant part of why CDP implementation is a bit of a challenge for us, right? And it's because the business rules that we would have to put in place in order to ensure that we are not infringing on legal elements like insider trading or some of our businesses, their customers are direct competitors to some of our other businesses, and therefore we can't even disclose that information. And it's a significant hurdle when it comes to being able to build that horizontal capability that I want to build, because they're just simply their legal um, implications and restrictions in a lot of instances. So first we have to understand not only who is this company on a spreadsheet to this business, but also what does it mean if that company ends up on this database or this report, or, we definitely don't want to be spending money on advertising to our competitor for a product that they wouldn't consume.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so the complexity around those business roles, and that can be straightforward, it can be regional, it can be it is really 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 complex, and throw in mergers and acquisitions activity on top of that, and it changes, right? So it's not even like you can do all of the crazy math once and it's fine. Nothing about this environment is ever set it and forget it.
Oh no, absolutely not. And it's funny that you mentioned that because on the last episode, I interviewed Lucas Lunau from Marsk, so huge enterprise environment too. And we
Yeah.
were talking about the same thing where that was in a build or buy context, but the idea was that if you are going to have technology, whether you build or buy it, really, it's going to evolve, and your data model is going to evolve, especially when you're doing M&A the whole time. But even if you wouldn't, it's going to change over time. So yeah, huge challenge. And what you mentioned about challenges in implementing this in a CDP, I don't know if it's related, but one thing that I have noticed that is a limitation of CDPs is that ultimately the vast majority of them, they tend to work at the segment level, not so much at the subscriber level. So real life conversation happened with a very well-known fast-moving consumer goods company, customer of ours, and they're like, "Oh, we're going to do orchestration in the CDP." But then you ask the question of, "Okay, but how are you going to intervene in the fifth email in a journey at the subscriber level?" And then it's like, "Oh, right." So it's good in theory to do this in the CDP because it's a center of data and all data is going to be there, but it doesn't necessarily allow you to intervene at the moment of an activity. So that's also where we made that very specific design choice to for our tech be at the level of engagement. So that has limitations, but at least it allows us to intervene a little bit better there.
Yeah.
So bit of a tangent here, but I did want to ask you more about how you think about this in an omni-channel context, applying that messaging, and how it integrates in your very complex tech stack.
Yeah. I mean, we've got uh, it it's a lot of fun, first and foremost, because it's never dull, it's never boring, right? And as we mature, we're able to bring more and more elements of that end-to-end omni-channel experience together.
Mhm.
Where it gets especially interesting is when we have a B2C consumer, for instance, somebody who has Shell Energy as their provider of electricity within their own home. And then we also find out that that individual is also the sustainability manager at a large company that we're targeting. So when it comes to omni-channel for us especially, is it's not just, you know, across the channel are you receiving a consistent experience, but it's also at a persona level, are you receiving a consistent experience? So
Mhm.
if you are somebody who, in your B2B life are a platinum customer, or, the highest level concierge, but then people won't pick up the phone for you in your personal life when you're providing your own dollars, right?
Mhm.
That's a significant disconnect. And so that's less about omni-channel, and more about, the consistent experience across the board. But specifically where we see it is the kind of the CDP conversation is one that we really haven't dug a lot into yet, to be honest. And it's because of our just marketing maturity. We haven't been ready for it.
Mhm.
We've been on a long kind of people and process journey where we've been trying to get folks to, really take the CRM seriously and help them understand what the lead object is for, and implement queues and do automation where we can, and really starting to get the foundations right in a lot of ways. Shell itself has been around for over 100 years, but Shell Energy is really still a
Mhm.
baby when it comes to, especially the B2C side. We've only been in business for 2 years.
Yeah.
And so omni-channel for us in this area is actually even more challenging because we're building brand recognition still. We are trying to establish who our customer base is still. We're still doing a lot of kind of that foundational business stuff.
Startup
Um,
stuff, one would
yeah,
say.
right. So we're a bit of an entrepreneur, I think is what it's called, where we have we have the financial safety to really pursue this because we think it's the right direction to go in. And but it's still, in a lot of ways, we're still very much starting up a business and a brand. And
Mhm.
so omni-channel is a little bit different from a Shell Energy approach than it would be from a Shell approach.
And within that mission of Shell, working more towards renewable energy, I wonder, how do you think about the future of MarTech? So if you look ahead, how do you think marketing technology might continue to evolve at Shell?
Yeah, so I would say it's definitely continuing to evolve. We Where I think it's really interesting, the intersection of kind of sustainability and marketing technology is is really AI. And the main reason why I say that is because I recently read an article that had, excuse me, a claim that stated something like, generation, generating a single email with AI requires 3 bottles of water in order to keep the servers that process that information cool, um, you know, to output one thing. And that to me is wild.
Mhm.
And so when we look at the scaling of marketing technology and how it interacts with responsible energy consumption, I think we need to be asking ourselves more often than not can this be AI, but should it be AI? And I think a lot of the problems that we're trying to solve with AI still could be done through a process improvement or just through straight automation and some simple logic. I think a lot of folks are jumping straight to AI as the shortcut to the problem, whereas I do worry about the data center availability and I worry about the sustainable angle of that. Now, when it comes to marketing operations or just a digital marketing capability within Shell, I see that growing. Shell's started to take a turn in the last 10 years or so, where they're definitely becoming more customer focused. And in order
Mhm.
to do that, you need to be able to build a relationship with your customer. The, kind of the stickiness in it is understanding beyond, just when does Bob order his standard order? It's usually the 15th of the month, and if we don't see him by the 17th, if we send him an email, he'll submit his order. Or if prices increase by more than 2 cents a pound, then he's probably going to hem and haw about it. But if we stay within this threshold, we can usually stay pretty consistent. That's transactional, right? And that's essentially where we've played in the past, because we've been such a large provider of so many different products that we were afforded the luxury, quite honest, of a transactional relationship with our customer.
Right.
And the customer expectation was very different at that point in time. So now when we evaluate the strategy, it's really around customer back. And that's on the B2B as well as the B2C side. Or, realistically, we're evaluating H to H, because at no point in time do two buildings do business with each other. And so it's really important to consider that human element in everything that we're doing, because it's humans that are driving the process. And
For sure.
so, the scaling, the evolution, all of that is definitely going to continue to grow. I mean, I know myself personally, I've already got projects slated for next year and beyond. And it's really, really exciting stuff.
There's a lot again, a lot of the things that you say resonate. Here at DESelect, we have the saying that companies don't buy software, people buy software. I think it's true.
Yep.
I also love to call out, especially because you're in energy, but also in MarTech, this consideration, this concern over the energy consumption of technology. And people say that we already have so much data and whatnot, but truth be told, I think we're not even storing that much data, or not that much unique data, if you think how much more humanity is going to discover and do and capture in so many myriad ways. I think we're only at the start of this whole data journey, but how we're going to store and process and serve it and preserve it, because data storages can also break down, which people who used to keep external hard drives know all too well.
Yep.
It is a really interesting challenge. Now, I feel we could go on for a long time here, Amber. We do almost need to round up this interview. I have two more questions first. I know from my own personal experience, by connecting you with people in my network, that you are great at giving advice to aspiring MarTech leaders. Are there some parting words of wisdom you'd like to share with our listeners?
Sure. I would say that for folks that are looking to continue to pursue this space, I would focus on what I would consider to be the four C's. And it's curiosity, communication, confidence, and community. And the main reason why I say those four is because I mean, first off, curiosity, I think is pretty self-explanatory. There's over 14,000 different MarTech solutions in the landscape today, and that's only going to continue to grow exponentially at a rate that we've just never seen. And so it's so important to remain curious, and in that same breath, failure is a blessing, and it's one of my favorite F words. And the main reason is because you don't learn, if you never fail, you're doing one of two things. You're either not exploring, you're not innovating, or you just you're just not trying, right? And so um or you're incredibly lucky, if we're being honest. And neither of those things are sustainable. And so one of my favorite quotes is by Nelson Mandela, and it's, I never fail, I either win or I learn. And I've taken that and actually created a Mandela Master Award on my team, where at the end of the year, the entire team votes on the most impactful learning of the year, and the team member that wins that gets a little. I make them a little trophy, a little light bulb, and I
So
put
cool.
their name on it, and they become the Mandela Master for the year. Um, Communication, storytelling is vital in anything that you do. And I went to school for management information systems, which I jokingly said that I was just learning how to translate geek to English and back again. But that's been my bread and butter throughout my career, is the ability to tell the story to the audience that you have, not the one that you would be able to relate to best. So it's really seek to understand more than to be understood,
Mhm.
and focus on what the audience needs in that moment, not necessarily what is easiest for you. So really focusing on what is going to make more sense, or more impact for those that you're trying to convince. I say confidence because a lot of the time we, especially, I would say, especially in marketing operations, there's some rampant imposter syndrome, right? Um, I think it was probably about I don't know, 10 years or so ago, when I just kind of took a mindset shift and said, hey, you know what? If you're in the room, there's a reason you're there. Own it.
Mhm.
And that was massive for me. Also, make sure you're investing in yourself. Take the time to go to the conference, take the time to attend the course or the webinar or the roundtable, or meet with your local community. It's so important, and that's how you're going to continue to grow in the space. Um, and that's how you also help build that confidence, right? And then the last one is community, right? This this is a new space, and it's constantly evolving, and there are some amazing marketing, you know communities that have been built within this to help all of us learn, right? A rising tide raises all ships. We mentioned it earlier, Scott Brinker and Franz Rismera, around the chiefmartech.com. We've got martech.org. We've got folks at Gartner and Forrester, and our vendor partners, and Mike Rizzo with the MoPros, and community events like the upcoming Mopsapalooza, which little plug, I'll be a speaker there, so I'm excited about
Awesome.
that. Carlos Doughty with LXA, which is a phenomenal learning group, and really focused on not necessarily focused on the technology, but on the capability, and the mastermind behind Anticon. And so between Mopsapalooza and Anticon, I would say those are two of the most impactful conferences that I've attended for this career path. Um, Also, don't be afraid to reach out. One of the hallmarks or the cardinal pieces of being in marketing operations, which I have never experienced in any other industry, is that we're all busy, but this community in particular is so universally committed to supporting one another. And that is just phenomenal. It's a safe space that I've not otherwise encountered in my career. And so, you know, don't be afraid, send the LinkedIn request, send an email, just interact with a post, ask the question. There's the worst thing that can happen is if you don't, and
Mm.
then you're either progressing with incorrect information or you're just not progressing at all.
Absolutely. It has been a surprise to me, or maybe not a shocking surprise, but I've noticed with customers that many people in marketing operations or maybe marketing automation, they can be a little bit isolated. Very often they're small teams or even individuals, even in large organizations. And so
Yeah.
they don't have a lot of peers to interact with and learn with and just get support and learnings from. And this is exactly like one of those reasons why we will do things like customer dinners, or we have a few like industry specific virtual meetups where we just facilitate. We have a really great one for Hire It, just to name one, but it's super fun. Um, Another thing you mentioned, imposter syndrome, like guilty. I actually had that at the start, even of my startup. There was actually a short while that I felt it was too pretentious to name myself CEO on LinkedIn. Very weird because the company was already active. We were already in the market, but I kept hanging on to that consultant title. I think it has to do with identity and how we perceive ourselves. But you are right. The moment you allow yourself to overcome that and shift your identification, your mindset, your perception of the world changes tremendously. And it's more aligned with what you really want. So I think that is actually great advice. So you mentioned don't be afraid, connect. Where can people find you? Where can people follow you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. Very standard response. You can find me at Amber-Sellens. And I'm always happy to take some time, do a virtual coffee, chat over um, either the in-mail function or, always happy
Mhm.
to just connect with folks who have questions.
Awesome. Amber, thank you so much for your time. This was a very great conversation. Appreciate it.
Of course. No, thanks for having me.